Greetings and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. I'm State Representative Mike Mrowicki from Putney, Vermont, and I represent the Windham 4 District of Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster. We're post-election now, heading into the legislative session that will be happening starting January 7th. We'll be there for 16 weeks, as we are every year. A lot of work to do, and today to talk about that, we have Senator Jeanette White and Senator-elect Becca Balint. Welcome.
Thank you.
We are here post-election, pre the 2015 legislative session, with our two senators that will be representing Windham County here.
And may I say what a joy it's going to be?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to the newest member of our delegation, and I think you'll see how well we work together as a delegation and that we can get a lot done. There's a lot of spin still going on after the election. We are ready to move forward. Voters elected Governor Shumlin, and the legislature will affirm that as our first order of business. Democrats won significant victories and returned significant majorities in both the House and Senate. We have 85 members in the House, 21 in the Senate, is that right? Yep. So we maintain large majorities and are ready to move forward, building on the agenda that we've been working with the governor over the last couple of years, moving forward on single payer, moving forward on education reform, education funding reform, and then we've got the budget to work with. Post-election, anything that you want to offer to how things went?
I must admit I was disappointed at the turnout.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people, I heard a lot of people talking about the federal issues, and they were disappointed in Obama and they were disappointed in this. But state issues are really important, and that's where people can have a huge impact. And we need to somehow convince people that voting in state elections and local elections is really important. So I was disappointed in the turnout.
It is always disappointing when people don't understand that connection in terms of the most immediate impact that it has on your life is voting locally and at the state level. And there's quite a few political analyses that have been done post-election with that exact issue, that if you really want to impact your life directly, vote on those local and state issues. I was thinking about that issue of people not voting, and I'm actually going to be visiting a social studies class next week at the high school. We had a great volunteer down at the Democratic office making phone calls, and he said, "Do you think you could come, to my class?" And I said, "I would love to come." And I'm hoping to really talk about those issues with younger voters, because that's really when the habit forms as well. So,
You bet. I do that with fourth graders.
yeah.
In Vermont schools, fourth grade is when they study local civics.
Right.
And what I usually do is I visit the classroom before they schedule their trip to Montpelier. And we have a little exercise we do on what democracy is all about, really.
Right. Yeah.
And what I do is I get them to try and nominate a state food and see how they can come together and what a hard time they have agreeing.
Yes, it's a messy business.
And so they get a sense of that. And then when they visit the State House, they have a familiar face, and we can visit, and they can get a sense of that democracy in action is sometimes kind of boring, but it's necessary work, the process we engage in.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to make sure that people understand, not about the electoral process, but about the just the process of legislation, that compromise is not a bad word, because you hear people say, well, you can't compromise your position on this, and you don't compromise your core values. But I think that Brian Doobie, we disagreed on probably everything politically, but he had a great way of saying it when he met with kids. And he said, when I was single and I decided to go to a movie, I went to a movie. And then I got married and I decided to go to a movie. Then I had to ask my wife, did she want to go to a movie, or did she want to go to dinner, or what movie did she want to go
popcorn?
to?
What are we
right.
gonna do?
And then we had 3 kids. He said, now there's 5 people that have to make and that's kind of the way. I thought that was just so, because we make those compromises and those agreements every day of our life, but somehow when we're dealing with an issue people dig their heels in.
And I think it's an ideological difference, I think, in terms of what government should be doing. Is government supposed to be making life better, or is the intention is to have gridlock, right? There are some people, at least at the national level, who would assert that that's actually what they want, is for nothing to happen, right?
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy
Right.
that then they can say government doesn't work.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that that's less so in Vermont.
Yes,
agree.
I do.
Really-
I think so too. But
I
in
think
terms of the national
yeah,
piece of why
yeah.
people didn't turn out to vote,
Yeah, but
yeah.
it's the Vermont piece that I
So
don't
you're-
care if
are
they
you-
didn't turn out in Massachusetts. But
Are you hearing that more than you used to in terms of not having compromise at the state level?
no. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
people get their heels dug in
Yes.
about an issue, and that's the only way to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
We
I don't
have
know
a
why. I
great
threw that
legacy
out.
in our nation, really, of compromise. Wasn't William Seward called the great compromiser?
Right.
And it was said in a very positive sense that he
Right.
got things done.
Right.
And that's how we get things done,
Yeah.
and especially in a time when we need to.
Yeah.
We're going to be facing a budget challenge, as we do every year. By the end of the session, we will have a balanced budget. We've got some discrepancies between our projections and how revenue's coming in, though. Jeanette, what's your experience with that process, with trying to fill the budget gap? In the past, we had some other options, but it's going to be a little tougher this year.
It's going to be
isn't
tougher
it?
this year because I think we've used up almost all of our one-time monies. We had ERA money for a while, and then we had to backfill on
Obama
those-
stimulus money.
The stimulus money. I think it's going to be harder this year to pull that out of the hat and come up with. And I think that we need to. I know when Governor Douglas made across-the-board cuts, everybody was upset because across-the-board cuts don't make any sense. And I just read today, actually, that Governor Shumlin has said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So we need to look very carefully at things. And we might have programs that shouldn't exist. And every single program, every single issue has a constituency and an advocacy group. And it is going to be very, very difficult to make those cuts. But I think we have to look at it not just making a 5% cut everywhere, but
Right.
are there things that we really need to just get rid of?
And that's what you have to do in schools as well. At the local level, it's very unusual to have a principal say, well, we're going to cut, across departments. You're going to look at where enrollment is
Right.
and where you need to beef up support. And
Right.
I think, as we talked about earlier, we have a lot of intense needs in terms of human services. And so how does that compare with our transportation needs and our infrastructure needs? And so as you said, you're going to have different constituents arguing, but there are going to be some programs at the basic, survival level that are going to be more important to people than.
Well, and I think we need to look at, I think that, we have the government accountability.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk a little bit about
program.
that, because this is new.
Well, it's really become part of the way we operate, and looking at outcomes.
Right.
And how do you determine whether what you're doing is getting the results
Right.
that you want and that you're paying for?
Right.
And if you're not, then do you need to keep doing it or
Right.
not?
Yeah.
And we have Sue Zeller is now the government accountability queen. I don't know what her exact title is, but they're putting it into all the state contracts. And it gets more complicated when you have a big contract like with the health exchange thing.
Sure.
I mean, I understand that, but
Right.
but there are performance.
And what is
outcomes.
what's the time frame in terms of assessment for accountability on a particular program? You know what I'm saying? So right now, is each program that's receiving state funding going through the same process, or is it a staggered process? I mean, this is a big undertaking, so I'm just curious structurally, if maybe you don't exactly know, but
They started by using a couple different. There are a couple different things going on. There's performance-based contracting, and then there's looking at whether by putting money into econometric model, it's called, it's if you're going to buy carrots for the prisons, you're going to buy lots of carrots.
Right.
So if you buy carrots from this person, you're going to pay $100, and if you buy carrots from this person, you're going to pay $120. But by buying them from this person who's a local producer, you're keeping all the money in Vermont. You're creating some jobs here. So you're creating a spin-off of. So they're doing that in some places, like Buildings and General Services is doing that on a lot of their contracts. It's harder to do that on transportation contracts because a lot of that is federal money.
Yeah.
So there's different things going on in different places, and a lot of the human services things now are being done that way with outcome based. And when you come in with an idea, you better have your performance measures and your outcomes in mind.
Human Services has been doing that really since Con Hogan.
Well, they did it, and then they stopped.
They stopped for a while, and then towards the end of the Douglas administration, picked it up again, and we've certainly picked it up. It makes sense. Anyone who works in the nonprofit world and has written grants has been working on results-based accountability.
Absolutely.
So we know what we need to do. We need to show our indicators and outcomes if we want to continue our program. So it's not new. That it's going to be used across the board, I think, is new to Vermont. And probably a good thing, good way to measure.
Well, it's interesting because we had, when Jerry Myers was the Buildings and General Services Commissioner, we were talking about this. And the way the budget legislation is written, it says that they have to come in with their budget and they have to show what they're getting and what the results are and all that, and what they're saving and what they're spending. And nobody ever did it. But he meticulously did that. And he said, but nobody on the Appropriations Committee has ever asked him for it. So we had him come in and present it to our committee, so at least he felt like somebody was listening. But so some people, when they budget, do that. And then some people, when they budget, just say, I served 100 people last year, so I got $100, and next year I'm going to serve 110, so I need $110, without saying, did those 100 people, were they better off?
Right. I mean, I think, too, one of the things I've been thinking about is that voters, things are tight right now for so many people, and I was laughing to myself on the way over here. So I go to the gym a couple times a week here in Brattleboro, and have been going for, over a decade, and the number of people who have stopped me in the last few weeks while I've been in my towel, getting out of the shower, to talk about property taxes, to talk about how tough it is. And I think this is a really important piece for us to convey to voters about for it to have accountability for programs that are working. It doesn't mean the concept of the program is not what anyone is against. It's that in this form, is it doing what it's set out to do? Right. And so that we are using the money wisely. That's really what people want to know.
I think so. There's another piece to it that doesn't get talked about much too, though, or didn't get talked about much in the election. Wages have been stagnant for quite a while, so any increase is felt hard. I think most Vermonters see education as the best investment we can make in the future. Of course, we want the best for our kids. We want them to have a better future. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny, though, because it's in some ways difficult for some people to understand why, with declining enrollments, costs keep going up. I think we mentioned before all the human service needs that get filled in our schools now, though.
Yes.
Education is not just teaching kids how to read and write. It's sometimes what I've been hearing from educators is one of the collateral problems arising from the heroin epidemic is showing up in our schools.
Oh, absolutely.
And teachers and counselors are saying they're seeing behaviors they haven't seen before. Families in crisis. Grandparents raising grandkids because the parents are in rehab or in jail. So these are the kinds of things schools are dealing with it, though. So hopefully people can understand the complexity of what's happening. And at the same time, all of those things create a situation where there's a lot of frustration because of the cost of everything. And this is something we feel like people can vote on. And I think that was one of the biggest issues that came up in this campaign statewide in this election, was people wanting to see a better accountability and a smaller hit.
And I think people really want to understand the relationship between their property taxes and school funding. And it's, as we all know, it's very complicated. And to try to break it down into a few small pieces to be able to explain to my constituents is very difficult because it's incredibly complex. And so I think that's part of the frustration as well. It's just like, I just need it to be simpler. So when I go to vote on my school budget, I understand what my vote will mean when I have to pay my property taxes. And I've heard from quite a few voters in Windham County, and I won't reveal the towns' names, but who have seen their property taxes nearly double over the last 3 to 5 years. And that is terrifying for anyone, but if you're a young family looking ahead, you say, well, so where's this going to end? How am I going to be able to sustain this? And
it looks, it's similar to the budget in general. You know, we were talking about the budget gap. You know, in a $5 billion budget, $30 million is not an extravagant budget gap to have to fill, but those programs hurt. What we were looking at, though, is that we have some growth projected of 3.5% for the next few years. The problem is that we have spending that's projected at 5%. And structurally, we need to figure that out. Education funding is a big part of that. And I'm going to use that to segue into one of the ways I think we can address personal budgets, town budgets, school budgets, and that's single-payer health care. As we move forward with that, and I think one of the things I heard from my constituents is full steam ahead. The current system, the free market system has failed us. It's providing less access for increasing costs that keep going up, and there's a lot of frustration for that. We need to move forward on something that can help. What are you hearing about single-payer healthcare reform?
It's interesting. I haven't heard a lot about it since the election. I had a reporter ask me about it, but in terms of what people have been asking me about, it's been school funding and property taxes. I don't know. I mean, we live in different towns, so that also may play out. What have you heard from?
Everything.
Fix it all.
Fix it all. But I have
Yeah.
heard from a number of people about single payer and how are we backing away from it? Is the governor backing away from it? Is the legislature backing away from it? And I would say no to both. And as far as I'm concerned, I am going to go full steam ahead, and I'm going to work. I'm going to work really hard to see that we get there, because I think that and there's been a lot of bad spin on it. I mean, the cost of it. Well, we are already paying that money. It's just that some people are paying it and some people aren't. And if you're an employer, you can't afford a new payroll tax. But if it's replacing your premiums and it's less for you because now your competitor is also having to pay that, I think we need to do a better job of explaining.
I think too, it just reminded me when I was at the supermarket yesterday, a number of people, we all sort of glommed together. It was like, oh, I know you. And people wanted to talk about Jonathan Gruber. That's what people wanted to talk about, and sort of where do we go from here with this?
Well, one of the things I remind people is Jonathan Gruber works for the governor. The legislature has their own consultant.
And so that's important for people to know as well.
But I don't think that, I think that separating his expertise in looking at numbers and doing that from his political blunders, I think we need to do that. I can't, I mean, I don't think I've ever made such a bad political blunder, but I'm also an elected person, so I need to be aware of that. He's not. And he said some really stupid things, but that doesn't negate his brilliance in coming up with the looking at the plans and how it's funded. So I think that we need to separate that, and we need to say, let's look at the plan that he's going to come up with, and See what it says. I think that, and I know that there's been a ton of stuff out there, but if you look at some of the sources that it's coming from,
People who want to kill healthcare reform.
People who want to kill healthcare reform, that's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So
And I don't disagree, but it has this
of course
ripple
it does.
effect, right? And
Of
so
course it does.
it's the talking point that people want to talk about. So people have wanted to ask me about that more than actually future of single payer and what it will look like and what will the funding possibly look like. So it's, as we know, the 24-hour news cycle, and we are all just talking about Facebook and our iPhones and the social media, is that the stories
I know.
spin out very quickly.
Well, media creates news cycles when they don't have one. There was a big to-do in the media recently about the spay and neutering program. And while it's an important program, I'm thinking, is that really the best piece of news they could find today?
For that moment, it was. I
Yeah,
guess.
and there's a lot more that is out there that we could be talking about than what happened with the fund. And basically, it was used so much. It's paid for by fees that come out of licenses, but we're talking about transportation. We're talking about global climate change, protecting our children better, protecting our elders. I don't know where spay and neutering fits into that.
I think, though, that what we have to acknowledge is that there are little issues that, if they're not solved, are going to become big issues, and sometimes those little issues can be taken care of pretty easily. But if we ignore them, and they're not the things that are going to have a big impact, and they're not the things that are going to get any press or glitz or anything like that, except that they are really important.
There's a little bit of a change, though, in reporting, and I would say that I've been there 8 years now, and we've had some great reporters that we've worked with. In the last couple of years, though, the online people, I would say there's some of them who are practicing what I call gotcha journalism. And it's not necessarily whether this is an important issue or how big it is, but I gotcha. So the reporter becomes an issue, something small can become an issue, and then it runs through a cycle.
Right.
The level of what I would call journalistic acumen is not what I've seen in the past, and that's why I was really disappointed when the Free Press let go two really seasoned reporters. Luckily, 7 Days picked them up, Nancy Remsen and
I love Nancy.
Terry Hallenbeck.
I love both of them.
They're good seasoned reporters, and I'm glad to see it makes a difference. I think you can talk to them and have a discussion about issues, and it doesn't become a gotcha kind of thing.
Well, they understand when they're working on an issue, they understand the issue and they understand it. It isn't just surface.
Because they're journalists.
Because they've done their research and they've talked to people and stuff. So
we have 25 committees in the legislature between the House and Senate. Every one of those committees has an agenda, has things they want to get out there. I've heard from some constituents already on some issues they want to see. We've been making a lot of progress in some areas in the last few years. I think we've done more for our roads and bridges than we have in the last 20 years. There's most of what we do is nuts and bolts. So when we get down, I'm assuming you're going to be on chairing the Government Operations Committee again.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Did you have work left over from last year?
Oh, there's always stuff left over from last year, and we're going to look at public records, open meetings, some election stuff, the state retirement, the whole retirement issue that belongs in our committee, law enforcement, the structure of law enforcement in the state, all of those things are. So those are just the things that were left over from last year that we didn't finish, and who knows what else will come up this year.
And you said the retirement issue. I just want to make sure I
know.
Well,
our committee deals with the Teachers Retirement Fund and the State Employees Retirement Fund, and then and then it will deal with this report that's being
Right.
generated right now about whether there should be some kind of a state-operated retirement fund for residents. I mean, for just
Right.
people to put into, not.
Okay.
So those are the. Yeah.
As you were campaigning, I really appreciated, Becca, you're addressing the concerns of the economic concerns of
Yeah.
Windham County. I mentioned before, I think our real earnings have really been flat for a
Yes.
while.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that more and what
Yeah.
you're hoping you can bring to the...
You know, I think one of the things I'm excited about, which is, it's hard to say you're excited about anything related to the economy in Windham County, because it's been a tough slog for a long time. But in terms of the work that I've done on the workforce committee with SevEds, I feel like we have some good news when we project out 10, 15 years, is that many employers are feeling optimistic in Windham County that they are going to be hiring more. Will that translate to higher wages? You know, it's really too soon to tell in terms of, it's a broad spectrum of jobs that may open up. My interest really is in figuring out how to make the stronger connections between education and industry here in Windham County. And as a longtime teacher myself, I know that oftentimes there's not a lot of discussion that happens, not because of hostility, but because we are working under incredible pressures, both people who are in industry and people in education, and it's very hard to say, oh, well, what are you doing over there, you know, and how can we get together? And there have been some really exciting conversations that have been happening around the county about getting industry and people, not just at the supervisory union level, but also in terms of guidance counselors, talking about how to let not just students know, but parents know what jobs are available here. Because we do have some high-paying STEM jobs that are available that people don't necessarily understand the pathway that they can take to get them. And you talked about earlier about committee assignments. I don't know what committee I'll be on. I hope to be on education for one of my committees, because I'm thinking ahead to this program that we've talked about at the state level, which is the PLPs, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, the personal learning plans, very good, which are similar to IEPs, but for every student, which is a great idea. I support it. But again, it goes to that issue of funding and capacity, because it's a very difficult thing to manage without the resources in the schools. So we have some real challenges economically, but I'm excited that these conversations are happening in a new, concerted way, and I'd like to really be the conduit to get people talking about, because these are long-term solutions. So, but I'm feeling really excited about the willingness also of educators to say, how are we meeting the needs of those students who want to stay and work here, who don't necessarily want to go on to a four-year college, or maybe they want to go on and come back. How do we make sure that those jobs are here? So.
A couple of years ago, we passed the patient choice at the end of life bill. We've got some more work to do on that.
We do.
And your other committee last year was Judiciary. Is that something you're going to be looking at in this session?
That issue? Well,
That's right.
first of all, I hope I'm on Judiciary again. Yeah. But with new people, it's always you don't know what you're going to have to do. But yeah, we're going to do that, and hopefully we'll do it right at the beginning of the session. And all we have to do is get rid of the amendment that was put on that actually sunsetted the entire bill and the entire concept.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to do.
Yep.
And in my mind, and I don't know that this is true, but I'm hoping that this is the way it happens, when the legislature passed civil unions, it was a battle. And when we passed marriage equality, it wasn't a big deal.
It was a close vote, though.
It was vetoed, and then
Right.
there was a
Right. Well, it was vetoed.
Right.
But the original vote wasn't.
There was not the rank.
It wasn't the
Right.
ranker.
No.
And I'm hoping
That's
that
true.
the same thing happens
Yeah.
there. We had the fight 2 years ago. We don't need to have the fight again.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's true, but I'm hoping.
But it is an important issue for a lot of people,
Oh, it's
especially
a huge
with
issue.
an aging population.
absolutely.
So, Becca, you're going to be introduced to one of those issues that I don't think is so much a party issue,
Oh, it's not at all.
Right.
but it is an issue that's
Right.
really touches a lot of people.
And it's quite divisive. I mean, it's you're either there or you're there. This isn't. There are very few issues that are kind of black and white.
It's a
This is
it's a moral,
this really is a
soul
black and white
searching
issue.
sort of issue. And I was thinking about the connection between that and the aging population, and how we attended a meeting a couple weeks ago discussing about legalization of marijuana, and I really learned quite a bit from just listening to the stories of the people in the room in terms of how they see that as part of long-term care and alleviating pain, and I think that we really need to accept the fact that we have an aging population in Windham County, and that is going across the state. But of course, I'm looking through this lens as a newly elected senator here, and really thinking about how do the needs of government, or the priorities rather, change as you have an aging population. It's of interest to me. I'm very curious about that it isn't the same population demographically that we had 20, 30 years ago. And so that the issues that are top of mind for people are going to shift.
In human services, one of the issues we're going to have to look at is around elder care and elder neglect and abuse. There were certainly some shocking headlines this year around child protection, and I think we need to take a good hard look at adult protective services so we don't have those same headlines, because of the increase in the population. Self-neglect is one of the hardest things to keep track of, because within a course of weeks or months, somebody can go from being able to take care of themselves very ably to the point where they're not taking their meds, they're not eating, and along with that, exploitation of elders really needs to be looked at. So those are some of the human service things that, alongside the headlines, that I think we're going to. Senator Sears has talked about acting quickly on some child protection changes in our laws, and we'll be right alongside that in House Human Services and House Judiciary. But these are some other things that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, and I think that we hear a lot about single payer, and we hear a lot about education and the property tax, and but as you said, there are 35, is it?
25.
25 committees up there.
13 and 12.
So, and each of them has kind of an area, and we're not all looking at the budget at the same time, and we're not all focusing on single payer. So there are, sometimes you get, what are you doing paying attention to that when you should be working on this important issue? And we can do more than one thing at the same time.
And we don't have the luxury to only focus on one thing. We have to look at the whole.
Well, yeah. Can I just, I don't know that people know this or not, but when you were talking about the Windham County delegation, the,
why don't you start again so he can edit that
Head out the sneeze.
When you were talking about the Windham County delegation, the, I don't know if people know this or not, but we work together pretty well as a delegation, and we tend to look at things that might be unique to Windham County and how we can work on those. We meet once a month. At least. But we have a regularly scheduled once a month meeting for the Windham County delegation up there. And people come up and talk about things that are important to Windham County and how we can help with that. So I think that's important for people to know that we do that. And if they have issues that they think are uniquely situated or important to Windham County, that they should bring those to us.
So how can people get in touch with you, each of you? What's the best way to get in touch with you, Jeanette, if people have concerns that they want to have you follow up on?
My legislative email.
Okay, which
is jwhite@leg.state.bt.us. And then our telephone numbers, and they're all on the legislative website.
The State House telephone number?
800-322-5616.
And people can get messages to us that way too.
Right, that we don't have offices, we don't have staff, so my staff can't call your staff, even though some people ask that they do. Please have your people call my people. But we do get messages delivered to us every day by those wonderful, wonderful 8th graders, the Pages.
Yeah.
We're so excited.
They are so wonderful.
So have you been given an email yet, or?
I have been given an email, but until it's set up, since
Yeah.
it won't be
Okay.
set up until the session, people can call me at home. I'm in
Yeah.
the book. I'm the only Balint in Vermont.
All right.
And
The number?
is 802-257-4162. And you can also email me directly at beccabalint@gmail.com.
Sure. Great.
And then once the session starts, I'll be checking, obviously, the legislative email.
Yeah.
Probably more than my personal email, so.
Yeah.
They'll come in,
Yes.
especially when we get a hot issue. And my
Yeah.
my phone number, I say, it's the easiest one in Putney to
is.
remember. It's 802-387-8787.
Oh,
And
that
operators
is.
are standing by now to take your call. Or you can also email me, mrowicki@leg.state.vt.us. And we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
We want to hear from you throughout the session.
Absolutely.
As we go into the session, we'll be talking with our legislators again as issues come up, and following up with the good people here at BCTV that help
Great.
bring our work closer to you.
Can I just mention that sometimes people want you to get back to them right away,
Right.
but because we don't have staff, and there are days when I get 200 or 300 emails, plus the phone calls and the letters.
Right.
So we may not get, I read
Yeah.
all of my emails right away when they come,
Yeah.
but I don't have the time to respond to everybody right away. And people, I hope people understand
Yeah.
that we're not ignoring them.
Yep.
That it's
The volume.
the volume. We're going to have Wi-Fi at our house this year, so we can use our little iPads and
Ah.
answer people into the wee hours of the night. We have never had that before where we live up there.
So as we've got a few minutes left, anything you want to leave with our constituents who are listening before we go?
Well, I would just
No.
say contact us about issues, and don't think that it's just those big issues.
Right.
I mean, I've already got a bill drafted. It's really, really tiny, but some people like West Brattleboro will think it's great. It allows census-designated regions to have a sign saying "Welcome to West Brattleboro."
Yeah.
Right now, they're not allowed to have that.
Right, yeah.
So this is a really tiny little
Right.
thing, but there are 74 of those in Vermont,
Yep.
and it might make a difference for some of them.
Right.
So it can be little things,
Yep.
and people should get a hold of us and ask us to see if we can do something for them.
Yeah. And don't be shy to call or email, because that's how we know what is pressing for people. And I love talking to
Yeah.
people. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to run.
Don't go grocery shopping if you're in a hurry, though.
No, I've learned
No.
that. I
Yes.
have learned that.
Yes.
There's no more running for a dozen eggs.
No.
That ground level connection, though, I think what makes it our
Yes.
legislature different. And the other thing, besides big issues and legislative issues, we can also help with personal issues sometimes that have to do with the government. For example,
Right.
if you're not getting your heating assistance,
Right.
if your grandmother is not getting the home health aid showing up on time,
Right.
if something else comes up that you just don't know who to call, sometimes we might have that information. Sometimes we can get that information for you. And especially, for instance, while the new online health exchange seems to be working a lot better, if you run into problems, give us a call. We can connect with people in the State House, especially when we're up there during that 16 weeks of the legislative session. So those small personal things are the constituent work that I think is really the foundation of what we do too here in Vermont.
And I tend not to follow through on those personally, but rather to refer them to
That's
the person at the state level who I know can handle them, and just get the person's permission to send their email on to that person or whatever, because there's no way that
Sure.
we could deal with all of the issues.
No, but what we can do is
Personally,
open
we can-
doors
and make
calls.
connections.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And make the connections to
those
get
problems
Exactly.
solved.
Shine
Get
a light
people
on
help.
what's
Right.
going on for them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I think it's going to be exciting. It's
Yeah.
going to be
It
an
is.
exciting year. It's going to be
It is.
really hard work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really hard work, but that's what it's about.
it is.
It's and I'm.
There
looking
is
forward
always
to it.
opportunity and challenge. I know you said it was a bad word, but
Well,
we
no,
have,
no,
you know-
challenge for change.
I
was-
see that. Okay.
That was a
Phrase,
bad.
yes.
That was bad
Got
phrase.
you, got you.
Challenge is fine.
Yeah.
We like challenges and
Yeah.
yeah. But we have I think 4 new people in the Senate this year. That's all, right?
Yeah.
It's 4.
Yeah.
So be interesting to see how the dynamics
Yeah.
work there.
Yeah.
And you met everybody, all your new
Yes.
colleagues
Yes.
at orientation.
Yes, it was actually orientation was wonderful.
Yeah,
it
they
was
do a
a
great
great.
job
They
with
do a
that.
great job. The
Yep.
Sibling Center does a great job, and it really makes you feel humble that you're doing the people's work. And I mean, Peter Welch came and spoke to us on the last day, and he just talked about how even when he's in D.C., he really thinks about his time in the State House when you are directly accountable.
And
Yeah.
you're sitting in those chairs and you're
Yeah.
saying, oh my goodness,
people
people
who-
have been sitting here
Yeah.
for
Right.
We are
all
standing
these
on the
years.
shoulders of giants who
Yeah.
came before us
Yeah.
and hoping we
Yeah.
can
Great.
continue their good work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
taking
much.
the time.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll
Okay.
be doing it again from Montpelier, right?
We will.
Okay.
We continue to do this.
Wonderful.
And thanks again to all the people here at BCTV.
Yes.
They help us share our work with you. I think one of the roles we play is to share what's going on, and BCTV makes that much easier for us. And we appreciate all the programming they do, especially this one. So thanks to all those people at BCTV, and thanks to you again for watching. Next time we meet, my guest will be my district mate, David Deen, and we'll talk about some of the things going on in the House and in environmental and water concerns. Until next time, this is Mike Mrowicki. Thanks again for watching.